Hi, it's Siobhan from enjoyrunning.net. I've previously spoken about nutrition and about sleep, and today I want to say a few words about exercise. Many of the people who will be listening to this are endurance runners, so they may be running distances primarily in the 10k to marathon range. So what I'm saying, I'm trying to tailor it more specifically to that group. However, the principles apply beyond that. So first of all, what exercise? If you're a runner, you may think that actually what you just need to do is run. And there are many coaches who say, well, if you want to be good at it, you just do that exercise. So if you want to be a distance runner, you are going to have to log miles. And that is definitely true. So one of the things I always say to people who ask me about marathon training is I ask them how much time they have. Do you have enough time to permit yourself to put in the hours running, especially as you get to the maximal duration phase late in the training before you start to sharpen up for the race? And if you don't have the time, then perhaps that is probably not the best goal for you. So your goals need to be realistic and need to provide you with enjoyment and a return on the investment of your effort, but you don't want them to be unrealistic in terms of your lifestyle. Now, as I said, once you've set your goals, then you might think, yeah, I just need to then go off and do that type of running. So if I want to run fast, I do lots of fast running. And to a certain extent, as I say, that is true, but it is important to realise that there are other things that you might need to do to ensure your body is well prepared to take on the rigours of training for the event you have chosen. I'm borrowing this from the UK Athletics event group coaching course. That's the club coach, the equivalent of club coach for endurance runners. And as you might see from that diagram, I don't know how clear it may be on the phone, but at the bottom of that pyramid, you have items that you wouldn't immediately think of as applying to runners. Like we've got maximum strength, we've got special strength, we've got multi-jumps and multi-throws. That's in the pale yellow bit at the bottom. Thank you, UKA. I think I can use that just for the purpose of showing you. But my point is that not everything you do will be running. In fact, if you only run, unless you're very, very lucky and are physiologically very capable, or perhaps you've had a background in a different sport, and in fact you're drawing on resources that the average person who's only ever run may not have, but you really need to do a mixture of training, and that may well need to be phased. So we talk about macrocycles and microcycles, but essentially it's periodized training so that each week we don't always do the same thing. So we might have a bias towards strength training in a particular part of our training cycle and more towards speed perhaps in another. There's all sorts of ways to do this. It's a bit complicated, so I'm not going to go into it, but you may need more than just to run. And anybody who's incurred any injuries due to their running will know that they have often gone to a physio or a sports coach or whatever, and they've said to them, you must do a whole bunch of usually strength exercises, strength and conditioning, maybe flexibility. Again, you need to think a little bit about the event you're going for, and again, I think this is courtesy of UKA, although it's fairly widely available. You will see that on the left-hand side we're at the short distance, and on the right-hand side we're up at marathon, and you will see that they're differentiated in areas there. So at the shorter distance you need to have a better conditioned anaerobic system, whereas for a marathoneer really it's almost all aerobic. And in that as well, running economy for the marathoneer, this is the guide on the side, becomes rather important. So that's why running well is really important in endurance, because you don't want to be wasting energy. And again, you may need to do quite a bit of running, but you may also need to do what I call prehab or corrective strength and conditioning and flexibility work to enable you to run well. And you may need even to have a look at your running form and see if it's as good as it can be. Workload is another big factor. So sometimes people assume, and correctly to a certain extent, say for example if you're training for marathon, that you have to carry a large workload. And in fact, if you want to improve your time at marathon, perhaps not your first marathon, you may simply want to actually turn up on race day uninjured and run that 26.25 miles, and that will be good enough for the first time. But later on, people often want to increase their performance. And again, this is something that they're going to have to work towards in a structured way. It is important to realise, and again I'm borrowing this from Lydiard training, but again it's something that you could find on the internet quite easily, or something very comparable. You can see that every time we train, we stress our body, and so this training is the blue, and it causes our body to have a recovery requirement where its performance along that black line, the x-axis so to speak, is worse than it would be normally. And then our body adapts and it repairs itself, and we would like to do our next training session when our body is best prepared for the next session, and that's usually when we're properly recovered. The time to recover between sessions is variable depending on the individual, but in general, following a very strict routine without any consideration of how recovered a person is can lead to people causing their body not to recover between sessions, and to develop a chronic deficit in recovery, leading to overuse injuries and just sheer fatigue and that sort of dead legs feeling that, you know, if you've overdone it, you've gone and done your long run on a Sunday, we'll say, and then on Monday you decide to do an anaerobic session, on Tuesday you might do a speed work, by Wednesday you're absolutely knackered. And most of us discover by trial and error. You can be a little bit more scientific about it, and I'll speak about that in a later video, but recovery between sessions is really important. And again, this is courtesy of my Lydiard training. You can see that different types of training cause variable durations of recovery requirement. So if you do an easy long run, you will still have a significant recovery requirement. But obviously, if you do a very hard anaerobic session, the recovery time, the time between that session and the next session that you're capable of benefiting from, will be longer. And sometimes it can be up to 3 days, even in youngish people. If you do, say, an intensive anaerobic session, it could take you 48 to 74 hours, 72 hours. So 2 to 3 days. It is very variable, and you do need to monitor your recovery to ensure that you are aware of your capabilities, and they may change over time depending on any ancillary workload you carry, such as strength training. Even if it's at the kind of lighter end of the scale, more core exercises, they all take a toll on your body, and you need to add it all together and put into the mix and consider where you're at. So I have this mantra, grab your sneakers, and that's not because I've become American. It's sneakers, sleep, S for sleep, N for nutrition, and then exercise, E, sneakers, S-N-E-A-K, I haven't got anything else for the rest of the word. But grab your sneakers means you need to make sure your sleep is in order. Check out the previous video for a very quick run through. Then you look at your nutrition. My first video covered that at a very basic level. There's a lot of information out there on it, and again there's individuality and dietary preference, and then and only then consider your exercise. And there's quite a bit to consider in exercise, your goals, your life demands, your workload in relation to your ability to recover from it, and then the scheduling of that workload, so the periodisation of your training. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak again soon.